for me, the tie-in here is I broke a cycle. I broke the cycle of what my family dynamics look like. And my children don't know what that cycle is. And that's empowered them to make better decisions.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? It's absolutely amazing. But that's what becoming CFO gave me, was the ability to realize that and go, whoa, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
What is my legacy and what am I leaving behind and how do I create that?
On this next episode of Paradigm Shifts, we're joined by Carmen Johnson, CFAO at ORC, with over 25 years of leadership expertise in corporate finance and administration. Beyond her role at ORC, Carmen provides consulting services through a regional and division model, totaling revenues of about $80 million annually. She holds an MBA from Boise State University and a Master of Accounting from Florida Atlantic University, alongside a project management certificate from the University of North Carolina. A proactive Vistage member since 2009, Carmen is renowned for her strategic insights and transformative leadership. Join us as she tells the story of how to navigate the emptiness that can come from hitting your peak goals and redefining purpose in her life. For more information about Carmen and how to reach her, be sure to visit the show notes. Welcome to Paradigm Shifts with your host, Kayshia Kruger. As an organization development practitioner and executive coach, I work with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. And here, we're on a mission to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. So, let's unpack light bulb moments for paradigm shifts within your workplace and beyond. Are you ready for a shift? Let's dive in. Hello, Carmen. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Kayshia. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Me as well. And the reason why I'm really excited, and for those who don't know, Carmen Johnson is actually my manager where I work at ORC or OR colon, and she is the CFAO. And she has been such an advocate. And there's a difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And I think you fill both of those roles for me.
Oh, thank you.
But our conversation today is really like a turning point in your chapter, in your life. And I'm really excited to kind of talk to you about this quest for success. When we start our journeys towards success, we kind of think about a summit, right? Kind of like a mountain with a peak achievement. And that once you get to the top, it like signifies you've arrived. And the journey all the way through, they say it's about the destination, not, the journey, not the destination, but that journey is really marked with like perseverance, and it builds resilience and determination, which I know you've got a lot of. And really what I want to focus on starting off here is once you hit a significant goal, and that's usually seen as a pinnacle of success, what does it feel like to arrive, and what are some of the unexpected consequences that come with achieving them?
Yeah, Kayshia, this is a great question. And I know we know each other personally, so you know a little about my story, but this was a hard one to admit. When I arrived, I was a single mom. I was raising kids alone, trying to give them the best, right? And I get promoted to the CFO role that I always had desired it, but quite frankly, never really thought I would achieve it. So the day I achieved it, it was almost a disbelief. I was expecting this great excitement. We all get to this point in life and you're expecting the feeling of success. So what does success feel like, right? And you get there and you don't feel anything. Matter of fact, it's kind of a letdown. It's like, what's next? What do I do now? And for me, I was very surprised by that emptiness. It was really almost a melancholy feeling that came around success. And when I arrived, I knew I arrived. But what I really recognized was I didn't have any future goals. And I was a goal-oriented individual. And that idea of not knowing what was out in the future, what was next, really was unsettling for me. So I immediately went into overdrive considering this fact and evaluating my life. So the journey, you just mentioned the journey is exciting. It's fun. You bring along all the people with you and you're being a leader and you're learning what next looks like. but I never really thought about it in the context of anything outside of my role. The role was the name that was given to me, right? I was a CFO and I was going to be a good CFO, but what did that mean? So I had to look back at that. I had to look back at it really hard. And when I reevaluated, I had to say, what's important to me? You know, how do I create something that's going to be great? What about this journey did I like? And quite frankly, what was the things that I needed to maybe retool or reevaluate? So I created this personal vision, and my personal vision, I don't know if you've heard this before, but it does sit on my desk. We haven't been in the office in years, so you probably haven't seen it in years. My personal vision, what I created at that time, was to empower and equip others and help them overcome their challenges by creating an environment that we're all feeling valued in. Well, when I realized that that was who I wanted to be known as, I also realized that's not what I was known as. So there's your paradigm, right?
That's the paradigm shift. Okay.
Right. So I'd spent all this time achieving success, and what I realized is I had left a lot of things behind when doing this. Hadn't thought about all the things it took to get there. So my identity got wrapped up in the career and not in all of the other things around your life. Ooh. So at the pinnacle of this objective of self-reflection, it led me to understand that I left a wake. And this wake behind me in the pursuit of my life and of my future, I had to sit down and figure out what the goal was and figure out the life's purpose, my life's purpose, not life's purpose. If somebody could figure that out, we'd be millionaires, right? That one's a tough one. But I wasn't at all proud of my success or of the role I have achieved. So
why do you think that was?
I will say that when I got there, I realized that the wake I left behind me was large. And reevaluating how I fix that wake and what needs to be done to be perceived as the leader I wanted to be, and that vision, that personal vision I put out there, you know, what do I need to change differently about my leadership style in order to achieve that goal?
There are so many significant things that you had mentioned that I just want to point out. And that the first one that comes to mind is we often, it seems like when in your story, you set your vision for success, so far ahead, and then never really planned for after, which is fine, right? Because a lot of times it's about being in the present. But then it sounds like your vision incorporated one domain of your life for the most part. It was primarily focused on career. And that was your primary objective, was career driven success. And then what I'm hearing you say is once you got to that point where you felt like, okay, I've reached the point where everything should culminate in this confetti moment.
Yes.
It's like you looked around and you're like, well, there are things that I didn't necessarily consider in part of my vision. What were some of those things that you might have sacrificed along the way?
Yeah. So I look back and I'm like, I didn't have any balance. No balance at all. Now I do now. It's a critical part of who I am. And as you know, working with me, it's also a critical part of what I expect for you, right? When I notice you work too much, I'll say, Kayshia, what's going on here? And now we all work hard. We all have to give it our best. And giving 100% of our work time is important. But we also are entitled to that balance of all the other things that we do in life, such as paradigm shifts. This is such a great way for you to create balance. I know how much this means to you. For me, I realized I had talked to my Vista chair about this in the past, and he gave me an analogy that I've adapted a little bit, but I realized I was on a speedboat. And I'm just essentially everyone's there for me, right? My family's just the passenger. Depending on the weather, they might hit a wave and get kicked out, and I'm circling around back and having to pick them up and throw them back in the boat, and who knows who's going to fall out of this, because everything was just driven forward. I had an inability to look at the present, and being futuristic is a gift, and any gift overused is not. It is a weakness, right? And so have this mission to accomplish things, and I kind of left out the things around me, and I developed this false identity that was wrapped up within that the role. So this comes a lot out of my upbringing. A little about, I grew up in a non-ideal condition. My mother was a single parent also. My mother was an addict, and that created chaos. And I'm used to chaos, right? So there was a point in my life that I realized and made a conscious effort to get off the roller coaster. We don't all have to live on a roller coaster. It's fun, and it's fun for a while, but it's sometimes we have to get off it. And I had led my life in a way that all the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys were okay because I was used to chaos. That comes back to the balance of, understanding that balance is important. I felt I had a lot to prove to people. Tell me I can't, I'll show you I can, and I made all the wrong decisions when I was young. Also, coming from my upbringing, I had my first child at 21. After that, I decided to go to college. So I went the non-traditional route and was always looking at, different than my mother, was how was I going to give my children a great life? And I was focused on that. And in my mind, great life meant nice house, nice neighborhood, nice schools, no poverty, having enough money that we're not struggling. And I focused on that. What I didn't focus on was how I was raising my children and what they were perceiving from that struggle, right? So when I say that, I quickly moved up the ladder and I continued to grow, but I left my children in the wake. And as I further pursued education and my career continued to take off, I had left them out of my goals, as you pointed out. So I had to reevaluate. And this was the beauty of meeting my goal, is I'm still young and I'm young enough to now recover. And so the next phase of my life was spent on is my purpose? What are my goals? And who do I want to be? So not who is my role, what is my role, how do I identify career-wise, but who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What do I want my legacy to look like? And how do I want people to remember me? So
I think this is so powerful for those who are listening. It's like your compass can change over time. And I think that a lot of times when going back to like wrapping yourself in your identity in the work, I don't think that's an uncommon thing. I think anyone who is career oriented does that. I do that myself. And you and I have had conversations about that. And there's nothing wrong with loving what you do. And I talked about this on my previous episode on navigating burnout for those who like are passionate about what they do. Maybe they're over functioners, but you can identify the different traits, the different qualities that you want to show up as, the different experiences that you want people to have when they're in your presence, the impact you want to make. How do you define your success for yourself? And it doesn't necessarily have to be wrapped up into something specific. I always find when we do that, though, God ends up changing things. So it doesn't always go the way we plan. So when it comes to like letting go, it's like you can focus on the things that you want to bring in your life, the opportunities, the positivity, but don't get so caught up in like needing to hit that one little goal, because in the grand scheme of things, how you're raising your kids or how they're perceiving how you're showing up is going to have like a longer term impact and return. And then what I also heard you saying was like, our stuff impacts us throughout our life. The stuff that we grew up with has such an impact on who we are as human beings, but also the people around us, and being so conscious about that. And I love when you said you're just so aware of and take accountability about how you're showing up in the world. And one of the things that's really important as well around this is being in survival mode versus working out of like a flow and a relaxed state.
Right.
So it sounded like the things that you had experienced growing up had kind of conditioned you and primed you to being in like a survival state where then you were focused on how can I be safe? That was your primary motive for the longest time. And now that you are safe, what are you going to do with all this energy and time and space?
You know, I love that. I love that you asked that. I'm going to go backwards a little bit to tie these two, the last question with this one. I recall two things very vividly young in my career. And one was as the CFO, then CFO, who told me I'd never be CFO because I didn't have an accounting degree. And immediately my reaction is, well, I can do that. You know, that's no problem. So I go and get a second master's, right? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you know, now I look at that and I'm like, did I need to do that? Because probably if I'd evaluated it a little bit differently, I could have gotten to the same result. But at the time, I'm so driven that that's the only thing that mattered. Now you fast forward today, and you're talking about balance and getting off that roller coaster and what does it look like? Today, I would have that conversation with self. I would absolutely go,
Mhm.
okay, what really matters, and bring in all the other components. Okay, how I got there with my family. What do I want my family to look like? How do I invest in my family to help them get there? Today, I would make that choice. I would say, I want to build those relationships with my children. Now they're adult children. As you know, I have a child your age. I hate to admit that. I was very young, as I said. I was 21, but I spend a lot of time investing in their success today. And what does that look like? And how do I help them
And you
achieve
have
their
and you
goal?
have grandchildren,
I
correct?
do. I have two of them, and spending time with them, helping them to get to where they need to be in life. And for me, the tie-in here is I broke a cycle. I broke the cycle of what my family dynamics look like.
Mm,
And my children don't know what that cycle
yeah.
is. And that's empowered them to make
Mm,
better decisions,
that's beautiful.
isn't it?
Mm,
It's absolutely amazing.
mm,
But that's what becoming CFO gave me, was the ability to realize that and go, whoa, this isn't about me.
yeah.
What is my legacy and what am I leaving behind and how do I create that? So getting the
Mm,
opportunity to come back to that. So the second statement that I mentioned that was made to me was actually a coworker who said something to me about, they didn't use the word jealous, but essentially they were envious of my career and how well I'd done. And the perspective that I gained from that statement was, wow, I'm sitting here envious of your position. You're married, you have two incomes, you have support with your children, you're not fighting the every day. And we all look at what we don't have in a different way, right? So
mm,
perspective is so interesting because we don't take enough time to look back and appreciate other people's perspectives. That's
yeah.
something that you, I hope, know, working with you, that I try to do when we're talking about change management, for example. We'll say, okay, well, how do you think somebody else is perceiving this? What are the issues that they might be facing, the things they might be thinking, and really spending a lot of conscious time on perception.
Yeah. One of the things that you do really well when we work together is like, let's say, for example, I'm proposing a new initiative, people initiative, and we have individual stakeholders who don't necessarily understand or believe in the initiative. And there's some pushback, right? And pushback is a form of resistance, but it doesn't always need to be negative. It sometimes could just be, I don't understand, is like an underlying root cause of the pushback. And sometimes for the person trying to, you and I are the doers, the change makers. We're always looking forward, we're always looking futuristically. That can feel frustrating for us. And the thing that you do really well is you help me look back and say, all right, let's see how much progress we've made. And we document that really well because you actually reference back to it. Like, look at all of the achievements we've had, all the progress we've made to get to where we are today. Would you say that at this point in your life, it sounds like, and I know you personally can be self-critical, pretty hard on yourself, and I think that drive is associated with that. But have you looked back and said, all right, I'm actually really proud of myself. Look at all this progress I've made to get to where I'm at.
Yes. So arriving at CFO was not that moment. We are going to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about ORC and selling. That was the moment. It was the moment that was hit with great pride. It was, look at all of the things and where my life is today and how I arrived here today. And you also know my personal journey over the last few years, which has changed me a lot. Going through breast cancer gave me a different perspective of just my meaning in life in general. And I will say, when I look at my world around me, the word I would use is blessed. Everything around me, I feel blessed. I feel blessed by my career. I feel blessed by the people in my life. That's work people, that's family, that's my friendships. The people that are surrounding me are by choice. And it's a huge blessing.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have witnessed your journey in the last few years. And I think anyone who goes through such a traumatic event in their life, such as breast cancer or some sort of life-altering change, can look at life moving forward as like an unfortunate circumstance or a negative thing. And you really help reframe that to be so positive. And I think that's a beacon of hope for other people who follow your journey and follow your story, because it's not something that happened to you, it's happened for you, is what I'm hearing.
100%. I tell people all the time, you can't take the suck out of the suck. Hate to put that on video here, but it's so true that you have to walk through the journey, right? There are things that are not perfect. There are things that you don't care about. But it is always fantastic. And the outcome is always what you put into it.
Okay, so there were two pivotal moments that you talked about, hitting the CFO goal and then also the sale of ORC. Why do you think the sale of ORC was the moment that you felt so proud, but the CFO moment wasn't? Was it because you had your eyes set on CFO? What do you think was the difference?
I think the difference for me was where I've come over the years. I don't recall how long I've been in this role, maybe 7 years. But the difference now is my intentionality. And after getting to the CFO role and realizing that I hadn't showed up the way I wanted to, I've put a lot more intention behind who I want to be. Go back to, I want to be a supportive leader. I want to be a advocate for you. I want to be the person that helps empower you. Those are much more important things than the actual role. It's the leader I get to be behind the role and recognizing the importance of that.
I love that. And your role was absolutely instrumental when ORC did this major transition from a family-owned business to being majority owned by a financial equity partner. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that challenge and like some of the strategies that you might have employed to really ensure that the company's core values and culture would stay intact in the future? Because that's a huge part of an acquisition.
Absolutely. First, I want to say this is one of my biggest honors in my career is to assist Kathy in this. Kathy was the owner. She now does have equity in the company too. So we're grateful to have her involved. But transitioning was a big deal to her. This was a family business that's been in business since 19, and she wanted it to be a multi-generational family business. And this year she reevaluated that and decided it was time to sell and retire. So we approached this when she came to me with, okay, how do we do that? And the very first thing we sat down with was what was important to us. When we sold, what did the equity partner need to look like? We didn't want certain things. We outlined these are non-negotiables. We had to have certain things, our people systems, our technology, our infrastructure that we've built internally, we really do think is a competitive advantage. How do we sell that to a potential buyer, to a potential equity firm? We had the conversation of, do we merge with a competitor? Do we do equity? What does it look like? And we became very clear about who we wanted to be and who we were, which is more important. Who we were is who we wanted to be. We didn't want that to change. And so we had to outline that first. And when we outlined what was important to us, then we created our matrix of how we would evaluate companies as they came to us. We went to market first to hire an investment banker. This would be our broker in the transaction. This would be the person that would take us to market, introduce us to equity companies. And that was the first part of our success, was finding the right partner. The partner that listened to us and understood who we were. And then we were looking for a partner that was going to honor who we were and allow us to continue on that way. So that was the first step, identifying who we are, what's important to us, who we want to continue to be. The second being, who is it we want to partner with to help us, making sure that person aligned with us and our culture. That was critical. That's the individual that sat with us and helped us create our management book. And the management book is all our financials over the past, who our clients are, what we are offering to an equity partner. But in that, we also focused on our culture and who we are. You'll recall that we sat down and talked about our people processes, our internal technology, the software programs that we have. And we actually created a script and a video to give to potential suitors that says, this is who we are. This is our culture. So going out the door, we announced, this is who we are. When we had conversations, we made sure that we asked the questions around, are you just in it for the money? Because if you're going to cut all these systems to make more money, that's not what's going to make us money. We are a people company. We sell billable hours. That's our people's time. And in order to be the best, we had to have the best people. Everybody says they have the best people. Every company says it. We know that. How do you quantify it? And that was a big discussion. And you'll recall having those discussions with me. We know we do because of our people systems, but how do we quantify it? And we had to be able to take that to equity firms and say, this is how we quantify our people being the best. They really, truly are. So that part was very exciting. Then we get to market. Now we've created the management book with the help of the advisor. Again, lots of it's financials, the boring stuff, but we were very intentional about adding all the other things that make us who we are, because we understood who we were. Then it comes to the point to market. We go into market, and I tell you, Kayshia, it was so exciting because we had identified the tailwinds in our company. We have the infrastructure bill. We have all the utility transmission lines that need upgraded. We know there's a large market. And it's since been quantified as a multi-billion-dollar market, right?
Yeah.
It was very exciting to do this work. When we went out to the PE groups, the first thing to do is send out the management book, and the PE groups are allowed to do basically a letter of intent. They're interested. They'd like to dig in further, right? We had somewhere over 80, I don't remember the exact number, but over 80 companies that said they were interested in learning more about ARC, which is incredible. Of those, we did have multiple offers. But back to, we had our matrix, we had the things that were important to us, and we evaluated all those companies. We're very, very happy to have partnered with Carousel Capital. They actually are local here in Charlotte. They have been wonderful. Everything they offered and promised, they have delivered. We haven't had any of the horror stories that you hear about PE firms and renegotiations and different things. We're only 2 months into this. We feel very supportive. We've had multiple conversations about what it looks like for investment into growth and what are the things we need to double the size of the company. And they are futuristic. They're looking at the future and what do we need today to hit that goal. And we're all excited about the opportunity for that. So we're feeling very comfortable that we have selected the right partner.
Yeah, no, thank you for walking us through that process, because I think people don't understand what all goes into selecting a partner.
It was very, very exciting to be part of it.
When employees are on the other end, there might be some concern, I would say, and rightfully so, because it's a big change around, well, how do we know for sure this company, this partner isn't going to fall through on what they say they're going to do? How do we know they have integrity? So, can you tell us a little bit about that vetting process, a little bit more about how you and the executive team and the previous owner really truly dialed in to say, all right, this company we can tell they're going to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thankfully, Kathy loves her company. She bleeds blue, right? So she wanted, as much as Steve and I, she wanted us to continue as is as well. And it wasn't all about the bottom line. It wasn't about the highest dollar. It was really about finding the best fit. So that also lends to this. Once we did pick our partner, we then, before signing the dotted line and deciding, before it was official, we went out and asked them if they had other companies they own that would be willing to talk to us about their experience.
Okay.
We also spoke with people in the community that were familiar with them, attorneys, CPAs, other investment bankers, the people that do buy and sell companies. What were other people saying? So we had a short list of interview questions, so to speak, that we spoke to others about. One particular company in particular that they own has been on this program of acquiring companies. They're gobbling them up like Pac-Man. JT has been so gracious to us and talking about his relationship with Carousel and all of the programs pre and post implementation that they have created. And he was also a huge help in understanding his relationship with Carousel because he was very transparent, and that helped give us some good feelings about this. This really was true, right? It's hard though. It's like a dating relationship, right? Everything always starts out perfect. You get into it, just hoping that you married the right person.
Do your background checks.
Exactly.
And that's what the references did for you, is really solidify that their words and their actions lined up. I love that. And I didn't intentionally mean to do this, but I think I'm building anticipation. People are maybe, hopefully Googling, what does ORC do? Who is ORC? So can you just share a little bit about the company that we work for and what we do?
Thank you. It's such an interesting company. I have been here 20 years this month. It's so hard for me to believe. I've literally grown up in this company. And we do land acquisition and right-of-way consulting for infrastructure projects. Those projects can be anything from roadway to a new highway, a highway expansion. It can be transmission lines for new power lines, cell towers, you name it. From an infrastructure perspective, we've been involved. Wastewater, rail. One of my favorite projects is underground transportation, your subway systems. There's all kinds of really cool infrastructure related projects we work on.
Yeah. Did you say renewables? Solar and yeah. It was really cool. I never knew about this industry until 5 years ago. I joined ORC, and I do think it is important to understand our industry and promote what we do.
Well, it's such a niche market, right? And there's such a huge need.
Yeah.
And I will say that the majority of us never think about how we get a roadway. You probably have construction right outside your home like I do right now. And you never really think about how that happens, what NCDOT is doing to decide that they're going to put a new on-ramp on the freeway, right? So incredibly important. We, as consumers of energy, don't realize the state of what our energy lines are in and how fast our growth in population is and how the needs for energy change daily. Gosh, thank goodness somebody is. Thank goodness that somebody realizes how important it is to upgrade our grid system and make sure that we continue to have power. People don't know that wonderful technologies like AI, we talk about a lot within ORC about what's next and how we're going to stay up with the technology and be current and not age out, right? Well, AI is huge on our electric grid.
Yeah.
Nobody really realizes the power it takes to function something like that. And when you look at the trends that show how that's going to impact our energy, well, we have a lot more building to do. So we are in an industry that has a lot of tailwinds that are pushing us right now. And that's a great place to be.
Yeah. And not continue to boast and brag about ORC, but why not since we're doing it already? If anyone's interested in applying for a job at ORC, check out our career page. No, but the other cool thing is that we actually are so interested in staying, up to date with technology that we're even standing up an AI automation work stream team, our steering committee within our organization, help understand what are the impacts on our business, particularly our niche industry, and what can we do to get involved in that and to get competitive. And I think that is going to be such a powerful and important discussion throughout our entire organization, whether we're looking at the impact on our business as a right-of-way industry, or we're looking at how we incorporate it into our organization and how it supports, amplifies, augments, enhances the employee experience, not replaces or takes away.
I love that you clarified that, because there's a lot of fear in the employee base that, wow, AI does all these things. What's it going to do to my job? Well, from my perspective, it doesn't replace people. It doesn't replace jobs. It changes them. And it changes so huge in our environment today. The need for problem solving at a different level to talk to AI will be different, but there are plenty of jobs. AI is going to create all its own set of new jobs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're just going to have to retool for that.
Absolutely. And so, okay, now reflecting on this transition process that we talked about with ORC, but also your broader career, talk to us a little bit about the key lessons that you've learned about leading through change when it comes to, significant changes in ownership or even company structure, and like what advice could you give to leaders who are maybe facing something similar as a transition in their organization?
I would start with 2 words: resilience and planning. These are key words through all of this. We all come in on any change at different rates and different times. We all see complexity at different levels. Not everybody's going to come right in immediately and always connect the dots. We're all coming in at different times. So it's important to help people connect those dots, help them create the vision and the understanding of where we're going, why we're going there, and really communicate, repetitively communicate. Can't say that enough. Our jobs as leaders is to help them see it. And that's the number one thing that we should be doing, is connecting the dots. This is true of any organizational change. It's not just an ownership change. Honestly, we've got organizational changes where we've changed our org structure and our tree of reporting that have been much harder on the organization than the ownership change. It's the perception again. In the absence of knowing the truth, people make up their own story. So it's critical that we're creating the story we want to be heard. I would say that's a big piece of advice. Create the story you want to be heard. And then leaders bring the weather. We absolutely bring the weather. So it's important that we're upbeat about it, that we're truly bought into it, that we understand why this change is necessary. Because if we're at all vague, people will pick up on that. And so this isn't the time to be vague. All of that comes out in the planning stage before we go to the people. We need to understand exactly what it is. Back to my boat analogies, we're wanting to catch the wave here. We want everybody riding along with us. We want them in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. We know what happens when we're not in the same direction. It's just it's not productive. So we want to keep us all connected together. I would say the way to do that is spend time with your team. Create those connections. Create an environment that is psychologically safe, that you can come and talk about issues, that we all see things differently. Back to our perceptions. If we're not listening to our people, my background and environment may not tell me the same thing that your background and environment is saying. So we need to do that check-in. We need to have the conversation, and we need to feel free to speak up in a way that's positive and, is going to be heard. So I would say our people need to be able to know they're seen, heard, and valued. And when they feel seen, heard, and valued, they are more willing to speak up. I can't always solve a problem. I may have to tell you, this isn't one we're going to overcome, but I can still support you, and you can still be seen, heard, and valued in that conversation, right? So that is incredibly important when we're talking about change, because people support people.
Yeah.
That's what we have to create, the connections. We want to not have the wake boat. So my goal today is no more boats. We're all going to row in the same direction and catch waves. And I would also say sometimes you just need to get out of your own way. It's okay not to have the answers, and it's okay to lean on your team for answers. Being a good leader isn't about knowing it all.
Yeah. It's not about knowing it all or doing it all, right? Really helping empower your team to fulfill their potential. And I love what you said about going in the right direction and listening to your people. And I think we do a job. I think we can always improve, of course, but I do think we do it well, where we put the right components in place to have a feedback rich environment at ORC and really allow people's voices to carry throughout the organization, whether it's through our engagement surveys or their continuous feedback sessions with managers, and really hopefully surface some of those things and questions that they have so that they can be answered. I think one of my favorite parts about OD is that it's a whole systems approach for looking at the whole organization, not just the opinions and thoughts of the leaders. We're asking the people being impacted by the change directly throughout the organization, like, how are you being impacted? What are the barriers or blockers to your success from where you're sitting? And I think that if leaders tap into those perspectives, they can create really meaningful changes and solutions that are helpful for everyone involved. Also, engagement will improve overall. So I love that you approach it from that perspective. It's a whole systems approach.
Absolutely. I think the resilience part is it takes a lot of time to shift. And I mentioned this earlier, your greatest strength is also your weakness, right? I have a gift of being very futuristic. What that means is sometimes it's hard to be in the present, right? And being futuristic, though, allows me to say, I want to double the size of the company in 5 years. And what are the things that I need to do today to get there? And the problem with that is I'm saying to somebody on my team, we need to do X. And they're going, but why? And we're sitting there going, okay, how do I plant the seeds and put in little bites of the elephant that are going to get me the elephant? Because if I put in front of you the elephant, we're going to go double the size of the company in 5 years. You're going to go, wait, how are we going to do that? I don't understand. Overwhelming.
Yeah, so it's interesting what you bring up, because a lot of times we talk about leaders being transparent, and there's a spectrum when it comes to transparency. We talk about it in compensation, but I think in terms of communication as well, it's important to think through, because sometimes you can over communicate too much. And then that misinformation happens, that, the stories that you were talking about. So we need transparency to build trust. We need that communication to build trust. But we also know that not everyone understands maybe the entire aspect of what's going on. And there are components that they might not see. So it's being really intentional at the end of the day with how we're relaying that.
I think that's the word I would have used, is intentional. And being transparent is not the same as misleading, right? So never mislead, always be transparent, but timing to transparency is crucial. So when we think through a big change, we also think through the timeline of how we should put information out. So build upon the information to get to the full scope. Some things you can't put everything out at once. And I'll use selling the business as an example. If I had said to the entire company, we're selling the business, what would have happened is a wave of it could have been chaos, and it definitely would have been instability, insecurity. How's this going to impact my job? Should I look for another job? What does this mean to me? All of that would have been this whirlwind of worry. And worry would have created people to make decisions that didn't need to be met. So I had very intentionally stepped back and said, okay, what is the timeline of what we want to let people know? And up to the process of having a letter of intent signed that we picked our partner, nobody was going to know. That did not mean I wasn't being transparent. That meant I didn't have a buyer and there was nothing to tell. That might take 30 days and it might take 2 years. right? And until it was real, there wasn't a reason to communicate it. But the day it became real, my first call was to you. Said, Kayshia, we need to have lunch so that we can have a conversation about something. Well, first of all, I said, we need to have lunch. You probably went, why are we meeting in person? Because we're usually pretty virtual, right? But there are also conversations you don't have virtually that are so important. You need to be able to sit and read and discuss and get to what are the questions. Back to the psychological safety. I had to give you the moment that you could ask the question, how does this impact me? So very critical that we sat in person. And then we said, okay, this is the timeline. What are the steps that need to happen between now and when it gets sold? And who gets brought in at what different times along the journey? Now, we weren't not being transparent. We were making sure we did it in a way that didn't make people worry or get scared or fear for their jobs or insecurity in the longer approach. But we always knew we were going to tell it. We weren't hiding this. The truth was to come out in a very methodical, planned way.
I think one of the effective practices that individuals who own change management efforts or lead them within their organization in partnership with their executive team can do is really think through what are the questions that employees might have, like start anticipating that. And if you don't have the majority of the answers, not to say that you can't tell about the change or announce it. It's going to come to a point where employees are going to ask questions, and that's okay. There might be questions you might not think of, but if you had, going back to your example, had just like shared this information about the change with everyone, not knowing the outcome or the direction or the decisions that would have been made, it would have ensued a lot of uncertainty. And so I think, when you get to a place where you can answer some of the most critical questions that impact their perception of stability, then I think it's a good indicator that you can do that, but you can also back it up and say, we don't have all the answers right now. We're asking for your patience, right?
Yes. And I think that depends on the level of answer, right? So back to your point, we had the big questions answered. There were still some things we were working out that we had to say, I don't know that, but I'll get back to you. But at this point, we were far enough along, I could get you an answer quickly. You weren't going to wait 6 months for that answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think hopefully if anyone is going through this significant shift in ownership or even company structure, that they've gotten a lot out of this conversation. I know I have, just working with you, this conversation, but also working with you in general. I've gotten a lot out of this experience and learned a lot. And there's so much more to learn because you said that the goals are to double the size of the company. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. We sold ourselves as a platform company. And what that means is we made a very intentional decision that we didn't want to be acquired by our competitor and we wanted to keep our resources and infrastructure. We know we have a great infrastructure that's ready to continue growing. And with having the backing of an investment company, they will invest on not just our organic growth, but acquisitions. So we'll be able to bring into us some other smaller competitors. And that's exciting to me to grow through both acquisition and organically. That's going to allow a lot more change management for us, Kayshia. Our next program will be on,
I'm so excited,
implementations of merger and acquisition, right?
Yes, let's do some M&A work. I love it. I'm so excited for our team at ORC and all of this. So really cool, innovative opportunities that are yet to come. Carmen, thank you so much for all of your insights. I think it's so valuable. I know hindsight is 2020. You look back and you had all these reflections and you shared them with us today. And it's not too late. You have a lot of path in front of you to implement those lessons learned. And I think your information, your insights are really going to help others who may be heading in a similar direction and they want to pivot or course correct along the way. And they can help align themselves with their purpose a little bit more clearly. And so in nature, the true nature of Paradigm Shifts podcast, I'm going to ask you an on-the-spot question to close us out. And that is, what is the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced?
Wow.
I love the little pause when I ask this. People,
the pause is so you have time to put your thoughts together real quickly, right? The most recent paradigm shift, I recently became a grandmother for the second time. And I now have, thank you. I have a 9-month-old baby, but the paradigm shift for me was back to breaking cycles and what values we want to instill. And I just had a really great moment with who is the Mimi I wanted to be, back to being again, instead of the role, right? All of us can be grandparents, but not all of us can be the best. For me, it was that legacy, that generational giving, and really thinking about what that meant. I feel a little bit like that at ORC. As Kayshia knows, I grew up here. I feel like it's my company and it's my heart and soul. So I feel that way a little bit with the sell of the company as well. This is my opportunity to instill the legacy as we move on to the next group of leaders and preparing them.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that more people when they listen to this are going to be driven to think about who they want to be. And I think that's a really exciting reflection question. Thank you so much, Carmen, for joining us on Paradigm Shifts podcast, and see you all next time.
Thank you.